Hello, everyone. Welcome to a joyful celebration 2021, where we are launching the Joy Thomas Foundation. My name is Mani Iyer. I'm part of the operating group of the foundation, along with Shyam, Yatin, and Murli. All of us were classmates of Joy at IIT Madras. A year ago, it was really sad as we had just lost Joy. And now the raw emotion from a year ago has transformed into passion. The emotions for many of us have now shifted to how can we make sure his legacy lives on? How can we celebrate his life and honor his memory? And that's why we're calling today's launch event a joyful celebration. A little bit of background. When we started, we did not know what we wanted to do. We had good ideas, but we were not all pulling together. It took us a good 6 months. What helped was constantly asking ourselves, what would Joy do? And we collectively decided that we needed to channel Joy. And now here we are. We have a great program for you today. You'll hear from the family first. We will then play a short video on Joy's life journey. From there, you will hear from our CEO on our core mission and the why behind our programs. We have two amazing keynote speakers, the chairman and CEO of IBM, Arvind Krishna, and Sridhar Vembu, founder and CEO of Zoho, who are joining us live today in conversation. We'll also have updates from our program teams and partners throughout the event. We'll also talk about how each and every one of you can engage with the foundation in any way that you would like, as a donor, a volunteer, mentor, corporate sponsor, or partner. We are thrilled that we have several hundred folks in the audience today. We have friends and colleagues of Joy and others who have only recently heard about the foundation and just want to lean in and be a part of this very worthy cause. One quick housekeeping item, the chat line will stay open through the hour. Please engage, ask questions. We have several volunteers standing by. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Tony Thomas, who's Joy's brother and on the board of the foundation. Joining him is Priya Patatil, Joy's spouse, and also a board member, along with her two children, Joshua and Leah. Over to you, Tony.
Oh, hi, everyone. Welcome to this launch event. Thank you for taking time off your weekend to join us. JTF has come together thanks to a great group of resourceful friends of Joy, others who knew him and many who knew only of him. They channeled their efforts into creating this wonderful community dedicated to helping young people with STEM careers. JTF is the result of their tireless efforts after we lost Joy a year ago. And we've been amazed at the breadth of support for this effort from so many people. I was reflecting on what Joy would have thought of all this. Joy took great pleasure in teaching and always harbored a dream of going into teaching students full time. Without a doubt, he would completely appreciate the mission of JTF. And Joy seemed to like nothing better than bringing people together. So I can picture him really cherishing this community coming together to give back. It's clear there is tremendous value and measurable value with every one of these JTF initiatives. The value of the community, though, is priceless. For Joy and from his entire family, our deep gratitude to Joy's friends and others who knew him, the JTF volunteers, and everyone in the broader community supporting this effort that we know Joy would appreciate very much. Let me now hand it over to Priya, and she'll be next.
It's been a little over a year since we lost Joy. God's grace has seen the kids and me through this difficult time. While we are still dealing with the realization that Joy is no longer with us, we are touched by the tremendous outpouring of love and support during this time by folks close to Joy on whom he had an impact. It's truly amazing how his friends and acquaintances have come together to create this Joy Thomas Foundation to honor Joy and his legacy. To Joy, a life of service was a life worth living. He often quoted James 2:18, "Show me your faith without works, and I will show you mine with my works." I think Joy would have resonated very well with these initiatives at the Joy Thomas Foundation. I'd like to take this opportunity now to thank each and every one of you, donors, volunteers, and well-wishers, folks that knew Joy very well, and those that will get to know Joy through the Joy Thomas Foundation initiatives. Thank you for your continued support.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all for coming today. I'm Joshua. I'm Joy's son. While growing up, I have heard countless inspiring stories of my father from his friends, colleagues, and former classmates, and a professor, and especially from my mother, who hoped these stories would inspire me. And yes, they did indeed. I admired my dad for his kindness, thoughtfulness, genuine personality, hospitality, and wisdom that touched so many other people as well as me. As many have said before, he was full of joy. To all the people who have had the honor to know my dad, thank you for sharing stories and for being a friend. He was the joy in all our lives. I do my best to be like him as a student, but more importantly, as a person. I know he's looking down on all of us like a guardian angel and guiding the foundation in the right direction. I would now like to show a video about my father.
Joy was my eldest sister's son. He was very energetic.
My earliest memories about Joy was that he used to read a lot. He showed the marked brilliance even at that early age. We miss him a lot.
Our high school had an annual prize distribution day. Every year the announcer had the same routine, and it went something like this. Joy Thomas, general proficiency, science, mathematics, history, civics, English language, English literature, on and on, until he either ran out of prizes or breath. Joy would walk up almost embarrassed to pick up this big load of books. But Joy never ever won the prize for Hindi.
As his classmates at IIT Madras, we first met Joy as the 16-year-old who had come in first in the entrance exam to the IITs. That was a very big deal. But Joy had this amazing ability to make you feel like it's not him, but you were the most important person in the room. Joy was then, and remains to this day, the moral core and center of our batch.
I came to Stanford and took the course on information theory with him. At the end of that quarter, Tom, out of the blue, suggested that we work on a book together. It was clearly the opportunity of a lifetime, and I jumped at the chance. Those 3 years were the most fun, the most wonderful, the most educative years of my life.
Joy did groundbreaking work while he was at IBM in the data compression area. His pioneering work in memory compression, specifically the shared dictionary Ziblum algorithm, made its way into the memory extension technology chips out of IBM. Today, memory compression is mainstream and is available in every operating system: Linux, Windows, AIX, iOS, etc.
Many engineers joined Stratify simply for the opportunity to work with him, and Joy took so many of them under his wing. When you think of a gentleman, you think of Joy. He was so gracious in all his interactions. He treated everyone with tremendous respect, and he made time for everyone, whether it was a child of an employee or the janitors who worked late hours. Joy was a gem. He was humble, and he brought such warmth, compassion, and wisdom to our team. And I'm forever grateful for the privilege of working with him.
He was incredibly generous with his time. I wasn't able to find an apartment when I first moved to California from the East Coast, and Joy and Priya invited me to stay with them. And that's a very fond memory for me and a special time in my life. And I feel lucky that I got to know him and work with him so closely and to really have him as a mentor.
Yes, it's important to do academics, but it's also important to do other things. This is the time when you have a chance to explore the world, and you should try and make the best of that opportunity.
Joy, my cooking buddy and foodie friend. His elaborate Thanksgiving dinners, delicious Christmas feasts, the dozens of baked cakes and breads were such special treats. Joy connected with all of us at the most basic level, cooking. My favorite place at Priya and Joy's was standing around the kitchen and watching him cook.
Okay, now sing. Yes, sing.
Yes, sir, yes.
When I came to the US some 30 years ago, Joy understood how challenging it must be for me to have no family and friends here and to begin life in a foreign country. Joy called me every week during the week, inquiring after my day. To Joy, everyone mattered.
We should be trying to support all these efforts to make sure that we do not lose the Ramanujans, or somebody could be the next Steve Jobs or the next Einstein.
Wow. We hope that video inspires you all and explains what drives us at JTF every day. And now it's over to our CEO, Shyam Pillalamarri, who will give you a foundation overview and explain the why behind our mission and programs. Shyam, over to you.
Thanks, Mani. Thank you all for joining us today. We are very grateful to Arvind Krishna, Sridhar Vembu, M.R. Rangaswamy, and Rohini Chakravarti for participating in our launch. Seeing that video brought back many memorable memories for me, and I'm sure many of you must have felt the same. With that as the backdrop, I want to take a few minutes to explain how this foundation came about. Last September 28th, when we tragically lost Joy, as Mani said, there was such an emotional outpouring from so many different people globally in expressing their sorrow. Eventually, that turned into a quest to find the best way to honor his legacy. It was an entirely grassroots level effort led by all the volunteers that knew him from different phases of his life. The depth and breadth of support was staggering. As you can see from the video tribute, he was truly an exceptional man. From the beginning, it was obvious to all of us that the best way to honor Joy would be to reflect his personality, principles, and passion in everything we did at the foundation. The very first thing that struck you about Joy was that when it came to STEM or any facts, he was never wrong. I learned this in my very first interactions with him back in IIT. Our awards program is in this spirit of excellence that he embodied throughout his life. However, given his extreme humility, we had to ensure that such a recognition of excellence still had valuable social impact. The very next thing was his helpful nature, which often led him to teach, mentor, and help others, putting even his own needs aside. Because of his brilliance, clarity of thought, and patient explanations, he was a de facto teacher to all his fellow students, be it in high school or college, or even at work. In fact, there are numerous instances where he taught seniors or even the teachers themselves. Our programs are designed to celebrate this very spirit of giving that he practiced unconditionally. For many of us, it's hard to imagine how we would be here without his help along the way. Focusing on education, teaching, and mentoring of high school and college students seemed the best way to honor him. We also wanted to ensure that the program started by the foundation would be self-sustaining for the long term. All of the current programs are funded by the annual returns from the corpus you've all helped to raise. All additional donations will help us to continue to scale the existing programs. Being an all-volunteer organization, we've been very diligent in selecting our partners who will help us execute these programs in the most cost-efficient way. We are excited to introduce these partners later during the event. Given his love for his IIT alma mater, our college program will focus on students in India, while the high school program would be more focused here. You will hear later from the individual program teams and our partners about the specifics of each of these programs. In closing, whether you're inspired by Joy's life or to fulfill your own passion for these causes, I encourage you all to lean in and support us in any way you can, be it with time, money, or raising awareness for the foundation. In channeling Joy's personality of true humility, this will always be a highly inclusive organization and everyone will be welcome in whatever way you're able to help us. So please join us in making this foundation a noteworthy legacy to this uncommon man. Thank you.
Thank you, Shyam. And it's now time for the first of our foundation updates on specific programs. This one is on our newly instituted Joy Thomas Foundation Awards for Excellence.
I am Murali Subbarao. I met Joy as a freshman at IIT Madras. Joy had just secured the All India #1 rank in the joint entrance exam for IITs that year. Throughout the undergraduate program, I saw how Joy, in his unassuming way, inspires so many of us to excel. In the spirit of continuing Joy's excellence in engineering, the Joy Thomas Foundation has instituted the JTF Prize. Now I want to introduce Debashish Bhattacharya, General Secretary of Pan-IIT Alumni India, to speak about this award and the partnership with JTF.
Hi, I'm Debashish Bhattacharya from Pan-IIT Alumni India. Pan-IIT believes that empowerment is the most critical contributor for development and emancipation of a society and hence the country, and supports the initiatives of the Joy Thomas Foundation. In recognizing the best performing lady in the JEE, the foundation is ensuring that an inspirational and doable story is created for others to emulate, as also a role model, thereby furthering STEM education in India, one of the crying needs of the country. Pan-IIT is happy to partner with the Joy Thomas Foundation in their initiatives and commit our support and wish them all success in their endeavor.
Hello, I'm Ajit Paranjpe, a member of the awards team of the JTF. Joy was a close friend and a classmate through school, IIT Madras, and Stanford. Joy exemplified academic excellence and inspired so many of us in our own journey. Continuing the theme of promoting, recognizing, and awarding scholastic excellence, we felt that having an IEEE award named for Joy in his chosen field of information theory would be a fitting tribute. As you know, the prestigious IEEE awards are recognized worldwide as a hallmark of achievement. Later in the program, Professor Suhas Digavi will speak about this award. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Suhas Digavi, and I'm a member of the Board of Governors of the Information Theory Society as part of the IEEE, as well as a professor of electrical engineering at UCLA. It was my privilege to successfully propose a Best Tutorial Paper Award for the IEEE Information Theory Society to be named after Joy Thomas. The Information Theory Society did not have a Best Tutorial Paper Award before, and thus this award fills a need and also comes at a fortuitous time when the society is invested in highlighting the broad impact of its ideas. The Information Theory Society has had an outsized impact given its size, on many, many areas, including wireless communication, lossless compression, learning theory, cryptography, and many other areas. Joy Thomas was most closely associated with the society, and given his research and writing in the information theory topics, he's really one of us. Moreover, one of the special traits of Joy was his exposition, as illustrated by his impactful book on information theory. Therefore, having an Information Theory Society Tutorial Paper Award associated with him is very appropriate. And we really appreciate the support of JTF in sponsoring this award. And we hope that this is the first step in our collaboration with JTF on several other education and outreach programs.
Thank you, Murli and Ajit. And thank you, Pan-IIT and IEEE for your partnership on our new JTF Awards that should inspire both female STEM students and information theory researchers. Joy spent almost 10 years at IBM Research. We are honored that IBM Chairman and CEO Arvind Krishna is joining us today for our opening keynote. Facilitating the discussion with Arvind is MR Rangaswamy. MR is an Indian software executive, investor, entrepreneur, corporate eco-strategy expert, community builder, and philanthropist. He founded Indiaspora, a network of diaspora community leaders who are a force for good. MR, over to you.
Thank you, Mani, and thank you, everyone. Good morning. Great to be here. I didn't know Joy, but all the information I gleaned during my research for this segment tells me he was an uncommon man. And I have the privilege here of hosting Arvind Krishna, the chairman and CEO of IBM. Arvind is a PhD from University of Illinois in electrical engineering. He is an IIT Kanpur graduate. He also has many patents in his name and also an editor of the IEEE and ACM journals. So a great STEM person here to have with me here this morning. Welcome, Arvind.
Thank you, MR, but also thank you to everybody else for inviting me here. And this is indeed a joyful moment, and we should treat it like that.
So I know that Joy worked at IBM Watson Research Labs for almost a decade. What are your memories of him? What did he contribute to IBM from your perspective?
It's a great question, MR. So many here, some know, but many do not know. So Joy and I joined IBM about the same time. I think he joined, if I remember, a few months before I did. And you got to remember, many people here talked about his entrance to the IITs, the JEE, and all that. You got to put that into context. People were usually pretty bright and pretty arrogant that they got in. And those who were in the first few hundred were pretty arrogant that they were that much better than the average. Then those who were in the top 10 were even more arrogant. So you can just imagine what being number one, as more than a couple of people here have remarked, meant. From there, he went on to Stanford, which is hard. He then came into IBM with all of the reputation behind him. And you come in here, you know his name. I've known his name since my first year in college, by the way. It wasn't at IBM that I got to know his name. I knew his name for 10 years before I got here. And you're expecting to meet this really arrogant, really, I got no time for you person. And he was the exact opposite. That said, he was working in a group that really was solving some remarkable problems. Ramesh, who was his housemate and a friend of his from IIT Madras, talked about the memory compression. We should put that into context. People had talked about compression for a long time. It was felt to be computationally infeasible. It was felt to be, yeah, here's this theoretical idea, but you're never going to get it in with any pragmatic nature into machines. And within a few years, Joy had proven that you can go do that using a mixture of old techniques, new techniques, his own clarity of thought, which is really what led to also the book that got mentioned. How many people in the beginning of their graduate career get invited by the top 3 people on the planet? Come write a book with me. I think that speaks to Joy's brilliant mind. And he could sort of cut through all the nonsense, go focus in on what was really critical and important, but then also expound it in a way that let's call it the average bright person could then take hold of it and do something with it. That legacy of his helping people around, because I remember you'd go down to the lunchroom, you'd be sitting there thinking about some tough problem, maybe on optimization, maybe on coding, maybe on something else. And Joy was always a resource you could turn to, who would happily give you a hint, never demand credit, never anything else, and move on. Lots of people also have talked about his friendliness. I remember I came here as a grad student to IBM out of Illinois. And you come here and sure, you made the transition to Illinois. There you knew some people, you got to know others. You come now, you're restarting. And the three housemates, Joy, Rajiv, Ramesh, I remember how warm and welcoming they were. You know, on a cold winter night, come over for dinner. He's always happy to have you there. And the conversation would flow sort of all the way from how you can help to sometimes into academia, sometimes around work. And those were great things. But the groups he worked with at IBM will always remember his contribution. I think it is so taken for granted now that we kind of forget it on how these techniques have really helped modern computation. And I know it sounds a little arrogant, but to think about it in green terms, if those memory compression techniques were not being deployed, we would need 2 to 3 times the total energy to run computing data centers. I think people forget how much these areas of information theory are woven into the fabric of everything that we do. So MR, I'll pause there, but that gives you some sense of the human.
Yeah, terrific, Arvind. Great perspective on what he contributed at IBM and his personality as well. But I want to focus on you a little bit because Joy stood for STEM and all the things around science and technology and engineering and math. So just take us through your personal journey. How did you as a young person get interested in science and mathematics? And what was your journey like? And walk us through how you got involved and got interested in this area.
Well, it always goes through a step of maturation. So if I think back to school days, you go through all the subjects, you got to go do everything. You got to do languages, you got to do history, geography, math, and science. And it very quickly became apparent to me somewhere around grade 10 or 11 that the two things I loved the most were physics and math. And everything else was kind of tolerable, I'll say. And then you begin to think about it and say, okay, am I good at it, or is there a passion for it? And somewhere around late high school, it became clear that there was a passion for doing that. I'm not sure about educating others at that point, but more about that's what I wanted to do. And as I thought about it, then engineering became as a desirable career. I had the fortune to get to IIT Kanpur. And there, I think a love for what it could do blossomed. And for me, it was much more about applying math into engineering, because I would sort of say a lot of engineering is applied math to some extent. And that really then took root. And as I got to graduate school and then probed deeper into the subjects and saw the connection really between all of this, that became an underlying passion. And I don't always say that everybody ought to do it at that level of intensity, but I believe that having a deep understanding of it is really, really helpful to everybody. And I strongly believe that we have the 3 R's that are taught in all high schools all over the world: reading, writing, arithmetic to some extent. I believe that the digital skills embodied in what kind of Joy did has to be the fourth one that everyone should learn. Not everyone needs to be practice those skills, but an understanding of them. The same way as not everybody's a great writer, but we should all know how to write. Not everybody does math, but everybody kind of knows at least basic arithmetic because it's a life skill. And that then led to that. And if I look at the sheer shortage today, 500,000 cyber jobs in the US alone, probably somewhere around 10 to 15 million basic programming skill jobs that are there, then trying to bring these skills to people, whether with high school education or with college, not necessarily engineering degrees, becomes a passion of mine, and one that we really, really want to push hard on as a corporation also.
Yeah, that's terrific. And I know you grew up in a military family. Did that have any influence on your trajectory and your path?
I think the only influence, or maybe more than one, it had was twofold. One, movement every few years was common. So maybe movement even across countries was a step, but not that big a step. The second thing it did was in the military, communication is actually key. People don't always understand that. And so thinking about communication and then going from spoken to verbal to digital to analog and all those things was always intriguing. And you always had this question, you bring together so many people into a typical base, and suddenly you have 10,000 people who have never seen each other, able to communicate, able to function, and be a high performance team pretty quickly. Otherwise, people would die. Was actually remarkable to watch. And as you think about it, I think there's lots of lessons on that for every organization to learn. Put the mission aside. I mean, we may agree or disagree with the mission, but the fact that you can bring so many people from different communities, languages, skills, and they can all function and reasonably like each other is actually something great to watch.
Great. So moving on to your personal effort here in the U.S. and IBM as well. What are you personally doing? What is IBM doing in terms of getting people excited, passionate, interested in STEM and like all the jobs you talked about?
Look, I know it sounds kind of cliched, but you've got to be part of the community. And at IBM, we have had the fortune to be part of our communities for 110 years. And as we think about it, every few decades, it's important to say, what does being part of the community mean? And we have taken really two things to heart, not really hundreds. One, we firmly believe in skill building. We just made a commitment that we'll try and train 30 million people in STEM skills over this decade. So that's not a 1 or 2 year, but a decade-long commitment. We also have a commitment to underserved and underadvantaged communities, mostly for high school, but maybe a bit more than high school through our PTech program. And the third commitment we are making is for girls in STEM, and that is global, but is also very, very focused on India. So as I look at those three commitments, that and the intersection with the Joy Thomas Foundation, maybe it's serendipity, maybe there was a bigger influence that Joy had that none of us are quite willing to acknowledge. Maybe there's a shared heritage in there of how we get there. But as we look at those three, there seems to me just a tremendous opportunity to also partner. And I know our teams have been talking in the background about how we could help amplify each other quite a bit. And of course, we are willing to help on the foundation also directly, but I think that's a smaller part. But if we can help amplify what we are doing around the 30 million training with elements on the Joy Thomas Foundation, because the STEM education is a big piece there. The girls in STEM, if I remember a number right, I think we're at 180,000 women touched in India right now. We do that in conjunction with the American India Foundation. And if I look at the PTech programs, we have about 200 schools globally right now, about half in the United States, half outside. All three of those are areas where we feel quite with reasonable confidence that we can work together. And I know that that's where we'll work together, not just with Shyam, but with the whole foundation to see where we can amplify it. And look, IBM owes a vote of thanks to Joy for what he did when he was here. He was always such a great contributor and so humble, and he helped mentor so many people that you'd be surprised, even 20 years after he's left, how many people who were here during his time have such strong and positive sentiment towards Joy. And I know there's many others we haven't talked about. I know Rajiv Ramaswamy is a great supporter of Joy. Anand Chingran, who was there on some of those photographs, is a great supporter. There's so many of us, both current and from, I'll call it the IBM diaspora, not just IIT Madras, who are going to be great supporters of Joy.
Great. And Arvind, you talked about India a bit. I know IBM has a big presence in India with 100,000 plus employees and such. How would you be able to contribute to that effort there?
Well, we spend, as you know, many of us are committed to doing CSR efforts in India. we have put close to 100% of our efforts on education and skills building. And so that's where it aligns immediately. We do a lot. I'll put aside a mention that we're also going to focus on, I'll call it some advanced skill building through medical research, conjoint with both ICMR, Indian Council for Medical Research, as well as IIT Kanpur. But putting those to the side, the bulk of our efforts, 90%, are very much aimed at skill building for high school and for college students. And within that, we have a focus on women. So that's where we think that there'll be a strong intersection. I'll let the foundation focus on giving the award to the best female IIT entrant. I think that crowd, unless my memory serves me incorrectly, is well set for success later. But there's lots of others who need a bit of a helping hand. And I know others here are going to speak of that also. And we are going to focus our efforts there.
Great. And in closing, Arvind, just a question. There's several hundred people on this call and watching it on different social media channels. How can the diaspora and generally anyone watching this, watching us at this point, help with this cause? What would you have them do?
Look, I think that one level at which one can help is always contributing either in kind or with cash. Many of us are fortunate that we do have the ability to contribute. Not everybody does, but those of us who can should. But let me put that to the side. The biggest issue always becomes scale. How do you scale something that it actually has a permanent impact and it has systemic impact? That means we need to get together and amplify each other's efforts and where possible, pick a few things to get done. That's where I would urge everyone, pick the few. The Joy Thomas Foundation seems one that can scale, and let's leverage it together. And so certainly give, because that's important. Without resource, nobody can do anything. But the second one that is really critical, I think, is the scale question. And so let's pick a few things and scale them. That will really be, I think, maybe the best honor of Joy's memory.
So Arvind, thank you so much. You've been so inspiring in talking about STEM, talking about your journey, IBM's contributions, and most importantly, what Joy has brought to the table here. So I want to thank you in closing for this wonderful conversation, and we'll keep in touch as to the future of the foundation and so forth. So thank you so much. And I want to now turn this back to Mani. Thank you.
Thank you, Arvind and MR. Arvind, so insightful, so enlightening. Pick a few things and scale. That's certainly something we're trying to do. And JTF looks forward to working with IBM and your STEM initiatives. And we hope many of you who are listening will consider joining JTF as mentors. Share your knowledge with the global STEM student community. So now it's time for the second of our foundation updates. This one is about the college STEM programs that we've recently kicked off in partnership with the Foundation for Excellence.
Hi, my name is Balaji Shyam. I was a classmate of Joy at IIT. I was also his colleague at Stratify. Joy often used to remind me that there are a lot of talented people who are unable to reach their full potential simply because they lack the financial means or they did not have the right role models as they grew up. The college STEM program at JTF addresses their need. Whether they're from a disadvantaged socioeconomic background or an underrepresented minority in the STEM fields, our network of mentors and partnerships with like-minded organizations will provide mentoring and financial support to students in need. For example, we have partnered with the Foundation for Excellence in India to help IIT students who need financial assistance. This program has a multiplier effect because of the commitment of the recipients of these scholarships to sponsor at least 2 other students after they graduate. And here is Dr. Sudha Kadal, a managing trustee at the Foundation for Excellence, to tell us more about their foundation.
The Foundation for Excellence, or FFE, is a 27-year-old NGO, and through a grant from JTF, we will be awarding scholarships to 10 academically bright students who are attending the IITs and other reputed institutions in India. These are also students who come from financially disadvantaged backgrounds. We hope this will be a transformational journey for students, as we also plan to offer skills training for employability. And finally, there will also be a chance to mentor students. And we hope volunteers from JTF will enroll as mentors. And I hope this partnership will expand over the years and we can create impact together. Thank you.
Thank you, Balaji and Sudha. Thank you, FFE, for the partnership. Let's now hear from some of our donors on why they're supporting JTF.
Joy Thomas was a unique individual. He was off the charts brilliant, author of a seminal work on information theory, first ranker in the IIT Joint Entrance Exam, one of the most competitive tests in the world. The list of his accomplishments is remarkable, but he wore his brilliance lightly, very lightly. His humility, his gentleness, his caring, these are the traits one noticed immediately on meeting him. You would not tell you were speaking with a genius. It was a privilege to have known him, to have enjoyed his company, including his cooking, and to have celebrated Onam and Christmas with him and Priya. The Joy Thomas Foundation is a fitting way to remember Joy, and a way for aspiring students to be inspired by him, both by his intellect and even more by his humanity.
Joy was a very dear friend of ours, and it is an honor for us to speak in support of the Joy Thomas Foundation. Joy was the embodiment of everything we love, an amazing human being, passionate about learning, and ultimately generous with both his friends as well as with a variety of nonprofit organizations. This makes the Joy Thomas Foundation, with its goal to inspire STEM students worldwide, such a fitting tribute to Joy's memory.
Joy's advisor and co-author Tom Cover thought of Joy as his Ramanujan. In the words of Professor Hardy, who invited Ramanujan to England, "We are merely explorers of infinity in the pursuit of absolute perfection." Joy truly attained that perfection, and our lives are forever better for knowing him.
Thank you, Arun and Pandu and Mala. We are grateful for the trust in JTF from you and from so many other donors. I'm happy to now introduce our treasurer, Yatin Modi, who will provide you all with a fundraising update and a little bit on our plans for 2021 and beyond. Yatin, over to you.
Thank you, Mani, and hello, everyone. I'd like to give all of you a brief update on where we are with our funding and our finances in general. We started our fundraising efforts in earnest in July with the intent of getting to $1 million in pledges by the end of August. I'm pleased to report that we met this deadline and are currently at almost 1.1 million from 85 donors with a median pledge amount of $2,500. We have even received pledges from people and organizations who didn't know Joy. For this, we thank everyone who contributed for their kindness and generosity. Of the amounts pledged, we have received almost $700,000 to date, and we're now ready to deploy these funds to the various projects that we have talked about today. We are also in the process of setting up an India nonprofit entity to facilitate collecting amounts from those of you who wish to donate in Indian rupees. And we'll let you know when that has been established. As Shyam mentioned, we are an all-volunteer organization, so our costs are extremely low. To date, we have spent less than $5,000 in operating costs since we started in November 2020. And we will continue to keep these costs low so that we can maximize the amounts received by the beneficiaries. Having reached our initial goal, we are now aiming to get to 1.5 million in pledges by the end of 2021. I urge you to help us get there so we can continue to make the vision of the Joy Thomas Foundation become a reality. I thank you once again for your support, and I'll hand it back to Mani to continue with the program.
Thank you, Yatin. JTF, as you all know, is a global organization. We're deeply interested in making an impact, not just in the US, but also in India and beyond. For our second keynote session, we are delighted that Zoho's founder and CEO, Sridhar Vembu, is joining us live today. Facilitating the discussion with Sridhar is Rohini Chakravarti. Rohini is a venture investor based in the Bay Area and a board member of the IIT Madras Foundation. She got to know Joy when she was at NEA, and Joy was busy building Insights One. Over to you, Rohini.
Thanks, Mani. It's inspiring to be here this morning to support the Joy Thomas Foundation. I heard about Joy first as an electrical engineering undergrad at IIT Madras a few years after he had graduated, and he was a legend. So we couldn't hear enough about him from our professors and how we would never measure up to what he had accomplished. And so when I met him in person, it was such a surprise to find a really humble and approachable person. And it was a real pleasure to have him involved in the IIT Madras Foundation during the creation of a scholarship for his classmate, Malati Veeraraghavan, who also unfortunately passed away a couple of years ago. I'm very pleased to introduce our next keynote speaker, Sridhar Vembu, who is the founder and CEO of Zoho Corporation. And he himself is a legend also from IIT Madras. Sorry, Arvind, this is we're going to plug IIT Madras here a little bit. And Sridhar himself is a legend. He's known for his unconventional choices. Started a company that was a product company in India when IT services were all the rage. He's also extremely involved in training high school students in programming to directly absorb them into Zoho. And he has built Zoho into a global leader with a large workforce based in the small towns of India. So a lot of the same themes that we've heard about that were Joy's passions earlier in the talks today. So welcome, Sridhar. It's really great to have you as the keynote speaker.
Thank you. Thank you.
I would love to just start with, your interactions with Joy and how you got to know him. And maybe you can tell us a little bit about how he and Tony Thomas have influenced you in your journey.
Yeah, I got to IIT Madras in 1985. And before we even entered, there was IIT sent us a kind of a brochure, what to expect in IIT, and the whole cover was actually written by Joy. So that's the first time I had heard of it, right? I read this thing that he wrote, sort of a welcome to IIT note that he wrote, a letter to incoming students. And then when you got to IIT, just like what you found out, that was 4 years later, that Joy was a legend in IIT, right? And this was like, ours was the first one that we didn't get to meet him, right? He had already graduated. But so we had heard about this. I was in the same department as him. I was in electrical engineering. So definitely the professors would talk a lot about him. And the next time I met him in person actually was in IBM when I interviewed for a job. And in fact, Arvind also interviewed me, and both Joy were there at the time. And it was the first time I got to know him. And I ended up going to Qualcomm purely for weather. Actually, my criteria was simply that I wanted sunlight, sunshine. So instead of in upstate New York, I went to San Diego. that was my criteria at that time. Right? I went to San Diego and I said, okay, I'm staying there for the weather. So that was and though I did, Joy tried to persuade me to come to IBM, but I went to Qualcomm instead at that time. That was how, and it was later, about 2 years later, I actually met Tony. I didn't know about Tony at that time. One of Tony's classmates was the one who actually got me to Qualcomm. Rajiv Vijay might be there in this meeting. And Rajiv was the one who introduced me to Tony when I told Rajiv that I'm going to leave Qualcomm to start something new. And Tony had left his job then, and Rajiv told me that you should link up with Tony. And that is how our collaboration started. And Tony and I have been together, 25 plus years now. since that 94, 95 meeting, actually. So.
That's awesome. And you also mentioned earlier that Joy was an angel investor in Zoho, and what became Zoho. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about and people refer to the in-kind contribution as well as and monetary, right? So tell us a little bit more about how that happened and what you felt was his contribution.
Yeah, Tony, when I met Tony, this was the late 95. Tony had already left Bell Labs to start his company, and I was going to leave Qualcomm. And the person who actually, in fact, the initial engagement, the way Tony and I worked together was that he needed help with the software he was building. And we were doing this in India, myself and my brothers, and Tony ended up paying us. And that payment was actually coming from the money Joy had essentially angel funded Tony in current terminology, right? That is how it happened. And I used to tell later joke to Tony that Joy should have gotten a stake in our company as an angel investor. Really, I really mean it. And because that was what supported our initial, it's like a sort of seed round. Our seed round actually came from Joy for this company. So, and I'm eternally thankful for this. And so is Tony, of course. And I've said this in public, and it is definitely very, this is the kind of thing that at that time, like we were nobodies, we had nothing to show yet. And it was Joy's support that at that time that carried us through for the first maybe 6 months or something. And then we started getting something in. That was very vital. And it was that contribution that set us on the journey. I should say maybe an auspicious contribution to us too. So.
Yeah, the best kind of ticket. Yeah. Maybe we can switch to your own, interest in STEM. How did that start? Maybe you can give us a little bit of your journey and probably what motivated you as a child, what brought you into the STEM field, and what it has done for you throughout your career.
Yeah, just as Arvind mentioned, I was really mathematics and physics were the only things that really interested me through school, and the rest were there, but was not something that you endured. So that's what got me into IIT, and then I picked a suitably mathematical field, and same as Joy, and also Tony. We all in the same field, information theory. I was in Princeton, and the difference was, unlike Joy, towards the end of my PhD, I got a little bit turned off by the whole academic experience. I decided this is not the path I want to be on. I actually felt at that time that we were doing a lot of mathematical models. I wasn't sure that all of those models were relevant to whatever we were studying. And I wanted to do real engineering. That's actually one of the reasons I went to Qualcomm. I decided we'll build real systems rather than only mathematically model them and prove theorems. I wanted to be
applied,
as an engineer. And that's how I went to Qualcomm. And that led to this eventually book. And that's where I learned to program, really. I had some, of course, in IIT you learn programming, but I never really did anything with it until all through Princeton. Then I went to Qualcomm and we had to simulate systems. And then I got into software through that because I realized how powerful software can be to much more than what you can prove, theoretically, what you can simulate and what you can achieve through that. And that's how I got into software. I learned to program there because I had to do it for my job. And then 2 years later, we started this company, and that's how I got in. And ever since, I have had a very sort of a practitioner's bent towards it. That my own STEM passion now is want to get a lot of people who may not think they're academically very bright into this. They can do it and then expose enough theory along the way. Because I feel that a lot of people, particularly in India, get turned off by, initially just too much theory you thrown at it. And this is true even in IIT, right? Even in IIT, you end up gaming the system a lot rather than actually learning because too much theory is thrown at you. And so that is what I'm setting out to do.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. I feel like the IITs have started, there is a very enlightened view in how the IITs were started in order to put a lot of resources behind what we felt were the best minds. And then eventually as life passes and, experiences wash over us, we can come back and be forces for good, as MR says. And I think you have embodied that and Joy has embodied that. So in some ways, that the IIT, that larger purpose is at work here. Maybe you can talk a little bit more about that point. I think even very early on, you felt that you need to expand this the sphere of influence, really bring in a lot more people into the tech-enabled world. And the skills development that Arvind was also talking about, you have taken that as your own passion project. Maybe you can give us a little bit of a background on where you're located, how you've made it come alive. I've seen pictures of you with a dhoti, with a veshti, and a bicycle in the fields of Tamil Nadu, right? So I think it would be wonderful for us to get a little glimpse of what you imagined and what you've been able to create over the last 20 years in STEM.
Yeah. So the company, this is Tony and I are both in this, and so are my siblings. And from the beginning, we took a very humble approach. Tony is another, you have to, he's Joy's brother in the way that he also is, remarkably humble person. In fact, I often remind myself of Tony's humility, just to, to make sure that I keep thinking of Tony. Tony is my Buddha, right? And I'm truly fortunate to have him as our co-founder and an advisor. And every day I talk to him, right? Practically every single day. So that from all of our conversations, we started out with suitably humble products, and then we have grown. And this is something that early on we embarked on the strategy where I would say we'd be like the Japanese, how they got to products. I felt that India should emulate Japan rather than America in this. That is the right model for us would be Japan and Taiwan later and South Korea and even China got the same way. Because see, the thing is in America, you can put together a team from around the world instantly. None of these countries you can do that. You have to build up the team. That's what we have to do in India too. So in other words, when you want to, for example, build video compression in India, you cannot assume that the talent already exists. You have to build it. And while in the US, you can pretty much assume because there was somebody would have done it before. Because a lot of it is born there. So somebody would have done it before, right? And so our approach from the beginning was how do we build the talent to build the company? Because we cannot assume that the talent is there. Pretty much we made the assumption in the beginning that talent won't be there. So we have to build it. So how do we go about building it? And that's how the whole journey towards our Zoho University, which is now called Zoho Schools of Learning, because in India, the government doesn't like the word university to be used by unregulated entities. And we have refused to seek any kind of recognition from the government. We have said we will stay independent. We are not going to go to the University Grants Commission and say grant us recognition. So we prefer to change our name to Zoho Schools of Learning than make it Zoho University. And that's kind of, again, part of my stubbornness and all this, that this is the way we will do it. So that the Zoho Schools of Learning, our approach has been that how do we build the talent from the raw potential there is, but not yet kind of realized. Convert the raw potential into kind of realized potential. That is how we started approaching it. This was way back from 1996. We had to do this. In 2003 was when the Zoho University was born. And now since we have about 15-20% of our talent have no degrees at all in our company. It's 20% of the people who write code here
no outside degrees.
Yeah. And that is how we've grown. And along the way, we also developed an educational philosophy, which we had to, right? How do we do this? Because now we have coding boot camps, all of that, but when we started, none of that was there. So we had to come up with a program, and we also had to do this in a way because we are drawing our students from really disadvantaged communities in India. None of our students could have remotely entered IIT. It's not even possible. So we draw from those ranks. So then how do we get them into this? So those were all challenges we had to figure out. And that is how we did this. Along the way, I got so into it, I decided to move back to India, and particularly to rural India. My own passion is to because 80-90% of our employees come from smaller towns and rural India. They don't, even though we had our office in Chennai, right behind IIT, Velachery originally. But most of our employees did not come from Chennai. And so I decided then we will, instead of bringing people to Chennai, we will go where we draw people from. So that is, and I decided to move myself. So now I'm in Tenkasi. It's a small town, about 640 kilometers south of Chennai. I'm not actually in the town. I'm in a village about 20 kilometers from there. So that's where I live.
That's awesome.
And then the pandemic arrived, and it didn't matter, right? Where you are.
Yeah, exactly. Now it's fashionable. Yeah. So maybe we can just finish up with how JTF could work with you, and like what inspires you to collaborate with the Joy Thomas Foundation, and how people can help you with your larger project, the larger social project.
The Joy represents two things, right? Absolute brilliance and also remarkable humility. He's the combination of these two, unique, really unique, right? To see these two in one person. And I want to take his humility and apply it to how we serve the really underserved kids in India in particular, but also everywhere. We are actually expanding our programs in the US, and we even have a program like this in Japan and elsewhere. So this is the goal. And so I would like the Joy Thomas Foundation to also focus on rural kids who are not going to be able to go to college, which in India is about 80% of the kids not going to college. How are we going to get the bright ones among them into STEM careers? And because once you get someone in, we have remarkable stories in our company where someone will come from a family where the monthly income would be like 8,000 rupees. And then within, 3-4 years, they're bringing 100,000 rupees a month. So they will be like 10 times more than what the original monthly income was. So it's complete change, right? And they vault into the middle class immediately from being poor. So we have been able to do this. And I have engineers I know in our company who come from extremely humble backgrounds who do remarkable work. So this is the company is made possible by the efforts of these people. I would like the Joy Thomas Foundation to serve these because that would be truly in the spirit of joy. And we have had conversations in Tony's home and in Joy's home in Silicon Valley on all these before. So that's what I would like the foundation to do. Thank you.
And I really do hope that the Joy Thomas Foundation can continue to do the excellent work that you have started off today. So thank you very much, Sridhar. This has been enlightening. Thank you for joining us this morning. And back to you, Mani.
Thank you, Rohini, and thank you, Sridhar. That was truly, truly inspiring for us, Sridhar. And we will certainly take to heart a number of things you said today. We are very much behind everything you said, and we look forward to continuing the partnership. Folks who are on the call, please bear with us. We are running a few minutes late, but we want to get to a couple more segments, and we'll wrap it up. One is a quick word on JTF's high school STEM programs, as well as we have a talks and seminars program. We are actively developing the high school STEM program right now to benefit high school students, both in the US and in India. we certainly will take a lot of what Sridhar said today to heart. In the US, I want to call out Sundar Nagaratnam and Rajiv Bharadwaj and our high school STEM team. They're exploring partnership with several organizations. Vinod Arvindaksh and his team have kicked off a regular production of JTF talks and seminars, which feature experts from the 1,000+ strong, we call it the Friends of Joy JTF network. The videos will be available on a regular frequency, both on JTF's media properties and also for distribution to STEM institutions and our corporate partners globally. We are looking forward to working with Sridhar, yourself, Arvind, and IBM, and several other folks to kind of get wide distribution of all those videos. So Joy was a student of St. Joseph's Boys High School in Bangalore. In September, the school's Old Boys Association awarded him the Lifetime Achievement Award. JTF is grateful for our partnership with the school, also with the Learn for Life Foundation and Thomas Teketela, and the support of all of St. Joseph's alumni around the world. So now here's a short video from the school. They're very thrilled to be a part of this launch. And so let's get that going.
It gives me great pleasure to speak to you on behalf of Joy's alma mater, St. Joseph's Boys High School. Our school was established in 1858 and has been operated by the Jesuits based on the principles reflected in our school motto of Fide et Labore, faith and toil. Joy embodied our school's motto, Fide et Labore, in all the work he did after he left St. Joseph's, and our Alumni Association recognized him with the prestigious Lifetime Achievement Award. We are also looking forward to our partnership with the Joy Thomas Foundation, through which we plan to roll out a series of STEM seminars and workshops to inspire and educate our high school students in STEM subject areas. On behalf of the entire St. Joseph's community of students, alumni and faculty, I would like to congratulate the Joy Thomas Foundation on its launch and wish you all the very best for the initiatives you have planned. May God bless us all.
Hi, I'm Vinod Arvindakshin. I heard about Joy when I was networking with IIT alumni. I've been specifically interested in giving back to engineering schools in India. And when I listened to Joy's video motivating students in IIT Palakkad to build careers in research, I was totally hooked. The target for our pillar is to organize research and career talks to bring together STEM business leaders, professors, and students worldwide. These talks will focus on recording videos, live Q&A sessions, and possible mentorship opportunities.
Thank you, Vinod, and thank you, Father Fernandez from St. Joseph's for your partnership. We'll now hear briefly from a few additional donors on why they're supporting JTF. We're greatly encouraged by the broad range and network of donors who are supporting us.
We are pleased to see the launch of the Joy Thomas Foundation. Joy was a dear friend and mentor to so many of us.
We are glad to see the foundation established to continue Joy's legacy and spread his kindness, generosity, and passion for knowledge.
Hello everyone, my name is Anand Chingran. Joy was not only a brilliant person, but really, truly a genuine person. I remember once asking him for a reference book. He didn't have it with him at that time, but I don't know how he produced it, but 1 month later, it was at my doorstep. He just knew that I needed it, and he figured out a way of delivering it to me. The best thing that we can do for Joy and his legacy in this world is to actually support the Joy Thomas Foundation.
Joy Thomas was an amazing human being, a true friend of 40 years, whose spectacularly brilliant mind was only surpassed by an even more awesome heart that is filled with compassion for those who are less fortunate than he was. So it's highly appropriate that the Joy Thomas Foundation is so focused on bringing financial and mentoring resources in STEM to underprivileged students in the US and in India.
Hello everyone, I'm Rajiv Ramaswamy. I had the good fortune
of having known Joy since 1982 and being close friends with him from about 1990. Joy was an icon for all of us, not only for his technical brilliance as a scientist and engineer, having made seminal contributions to information theory, but also for his humanity and concern and well-being for everyone around him. It is only fitting that the Joy Thomas Foundation be dedicated to the pursuit of STEM education for the underprivileged, and I'm so happy to be able to contribute to this worthy cause in his memory. Thank you.
Thank you, Maithili, Shekhar, Anant, Ramana, and Rajiv, and so many other donors for your support. Many of you are probably wondering, as we wrap it up, where do we go from here? How can you help? How can we collectively do some good and pay it forward through JTF? It's my pleasure to now introduce Murli Subbarao, who will deliver the closing remarks. Murli?
Thank you, Mani. First, a word of thanks. On behalf of the Joy Thomas Foundation, I express my heartfelt thanks to Arvind Krishna and Sridhar Vembu for your participation in this launch event. Sridhar, your generous, wholehearted support from day one of the foundation has been invaluable. MR and Rohini, thank you for facilitating the insightful exchanges with Arvind and Sridhar. The breadth and depth of financial support from so many donors helped us reach the 1 million goal in 8 short weeks. We did not have to temper our bold ambitions for sustaining Joy's legacy. A big thank you to each and every donor. It's one thing to dream big, but to bring the dreams to reality needs solid execution and support from like-minded partners. I express my gratitude to Pan-IIT Alumni India, IEEE Information Theory Society, Foundation for Excellence, Learn for Life Foundation, and St. Joseph's Boys High School. It takes a village, a larger team beyond just the founding team members to start a movement. As Mani and Shyam stated, it started off with just those who had a close association with Joy. Then we were joined by those who had been touched by Joy in some way at some time. It didn't stop there. Now we're seeing folks who had never ever met or heard of Joy join the foundation. They're simply inspired by learning about the legacy Joy has left behind. I say thank you to all these volunteers. You have collectively put in over 2,000 hours over just the last month and helped in countless ways to bring JTF to life. And of course, to each of you who is attending this event live, a big thank you. You gave us over an hour of your time on a Sunday. Your active participation through your questions and the chat raised the energy level significantly. You're giving us that much more momentum to help realize the JTF vision and mission. Thank you once again. And lastly, I want to thank today's event production team, Vijay Damoji Purapu, Karthik Ramachandran, Kumar Madalli, Anu Subramaniam, Nicole Maritato, Eric Garcia, and Balaji Shamkumar. Together, you pulled it off beautifully. So here we are, a remarkable day for a joyful celebration. You heard about the various JTF programs that bring the spirit of joy to life. Awards for Excellence, high school STEM program to inspire youth, and the college STEM program for those talented who can use an extra helping hand in the journey. And there's still so much more that can be accomplished. You can start by spreading the word. You can do even more to help us scale and establish permanence to JTF. You can join us in more than one way to positively impact STEM education, careers, and research worldwide. Be a donor. Support us through your money and stock to fund programs. Be a mentor, a volunteer. Lend your skills and time to any of the JTF programs that interest you. Even bring your ideas to life to launch a new program in line with the JTF vision. Be a corporate sponsor. Hire JTF sponsored students for internships or full-time roles at your company. And would encourage your employees and colleagues to volunteer with JTF programs. You can find out more details on our website at thejoythomasfoundation.org. We eagerly look forward to hearing from you. This concludes today's joyful celebration event. Wishing you all a great rest of Sunday. Cheers.